Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to our new webinar. Tonight, it will be about the shark conservation. It's a very special one. Issam, welcome for the fourth time with us. Welcome, Nouf Al-Ossami. Nouf Al-Ossami, she's a PADI ambassador with us. She's a PADI ambassador, and also she have an experience diving with shark, and she's in love with sharks. We will hear from her tonight about her experience, and we have our special guest, Dr. Jesse from CALF. He will talk about in details about sharks, and I hope that you will enjoy with us this webinar. Before we start, I would like to share with you something about Zoom. 1 second. Let me share the screen. And so just let me give you small tips about Zoom. I'd like to all of you guys keep the audio and video off. These are the icons that you can put your mic and video off. Also, for the questions, you can ask them on using the chat and the Q&A for the questions. And for sure, keep your control sound and max it out. I will start with Captain Issam. He will give us a small introduction about Project Aware, and then we will continue. Captain Issam.
Unmute. Yeah. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining our webinar for tonight. My name is Issam. I am a PADI IDC staff instructor. Many of you may know me. If not, I will look forward to meet each and every one of you. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke about Project Aware. Project Aware is very active to ocean protection. They have different programs. I'm not going to go through them tonight. We did a couple of weeks back. If any of you is interested to know more about this, I'll be more than glad to assist. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the shark conservation, which is also another program in Project Aware. And what Project Aware basically does is a global movement towards protecting our endangered sharks that are vital to our healthy oceans. I will not go into scientific details, as Dr. Jesse will be responsible about that part. I am definitely sure that he knows a lot more about me than I do. Yet I'd like to say one thing. Many people do ask me, why should we care about sharks? Answer is very simple. The less sharks we have, or let me say, the fewer predators we have in the oceans, we have more carnivores. And these carnivores are basically the bigger fish that eat the smaller ones. And those smaller fish, when they are in decline, we will have fewer herbivores, which leads to more seaweed, more algae, distress to corals, so on and so forth. So this is very quickly that this is one reason why sharks are very important to our environment.
Before,
yeah.
So, you've done?
Tell me. I'll be talking about my personal experience with sharks by the end of this presentation.
That's great. Before we start with Dr. Jesse, I always like to remind people about our environment and the importance of environment, and again, no plastic. And it's like a chain. Everything is related to each other. Pollution will affect the sharks, the fish, and our eco-life system. So before going to Dr. Jesse, I would like to start about a small film about debris from PADI, and then we will move to Dr. Jesse. So
The ugly journey of our trash. Marine debris is the rubbish of our everyday lives that makes its way into our ocean. Rubbish travels from towns and cities, over land, down streams, rivers and storm drains into the ocean. It also contaminates our beaches and favourite recreation sites. Once in the ocean, it can drift for thousands of miles to some of the most remote ocean places, leaving a wake of destruction in its path. Who is responsible for this ugly journey? All of us. Our modern-day obsession with plastic is destroying our environment. Globally, annual plastic production has boomed from 1.7 million tonnes in 1950 to almost 300 million tonnes today. And if this trend continues, as much as 250 million metric tonnes of plastic could make its way into the ocean by 2025. All of this rubbish comes with a cost. Plastics alone cost approximately $13 billion a year in environmental damage. But it's not just our economy that it's hurting. Every year, thousands of marine species fall victim to our trash. 95% of northern faunas found washed up dead in the North Sea had ingested plastic debris. All 7 sea turtle species, over half marine mammal species, and almost 2/3 of all seabird species have been injured or killed by our trash. That's almost 400 different species that have ingested or become entangled in marine debris. In 92% of cases, plastics are the culprit. Our trash hurts the most vulnerable too. More than 1 in 10 species that have fallen victim to marine debris are threatened with extinction. Where does all our rubbish end up? As much as 70% of marine litter has been estimated to end up on the seabed. But there is good news. Scuba divers everywhere are standing up to the onslaught of debris, fins on and off. We're removing debris underwater and logging the data to influence change at all levels. On land, we can work together to stop rubbish from entering the ocean. We can help inform community action, drive changes in infrastructure and waste management policies, and identify local solutions. Don't let your dives go to waste. Dive against debris. Together, we can help prevent and clear up this mess for a clean, healthy ocean planet.
Thank you so much. I hope that you enjoy and you receive this small message. And now I'll move directly to Dr. Jesse. He will start talking and let know us about the sharks. I'll be waiting for your questions. Welcome, Dr. Jesse.
Thank you so much. So do we have, can you see my screen? Are we sharing the PowerPoint yet?
Still.
All right. So, okay. So I wanted to focus on sharks in the Red Sea. It's what I've done most of my work on. It's, you know, it's close to home. But first I wanted to put that into the context of where sharks in the Red Sea fit into sort of the global picture of sharks in general. So globally, we have about 500 to 600 different species of shark. They're grouped into 9 orders and about 34 families. In the Red Sea, we only have about 30 species of shark from 3 orders and 10 families. So when we focus in on the Red Sea, we're basically excluding about 90%, 95% of the shark diversity that we see globally. And so this picture, this shark here, this is a 7-gill shark from South Africa. And you will never see it or any of its close relatives in the Red Sea. And you could say the same thing for the angel sharks, the saw sharks, crocodile, alligator sharks, the dogfish, horn sharks. We're losing a lot of groups by focusing in on the Red Sea, and these groups have interesting ecologies of their own. And they also have their own specific conservation concerns. But this talk is about sharks in the Red Sea. I do just want to say, you know, if you want to see some of these species, you're going to have to go dive elsewhere. And we shouldn't forget them just because, you know, the Red Sea is our backyard. So focusing in on sharks in the Red Sea, I'm going to go basically order by order. And we're going to start with the sharks that I've sort of worked the most on, the carpet sharks.
We're still the presentation, Doctor. We're not seeing your presentation.
Oh, hey, my fault. Let me just get the presentation going, and let's get back on to Zoom, share screen, and there we go. Better?
Yes.
Can everybody see it? All right. So the shark in the picture that you can all see is a 7-gill shark. It's from a kelp forest in South Africa. You're never going to see this in the Red Sea. All right. So now I'm going to move on, and I'm going to go order by order, and I'm going to talk about some of the sharks that we do get in the Red Sea, sharks that you might encounter on a dive here. I'm not going to get to all 30 species, but I'm wanting to give a broad overview of what we see, talk about some of the research that we do, talk about conservation concerns, and at the end, talk about how divers can get involved and can help us with the research, can help us learn about these animals. So moving on to sharks that actually exist in the Red Sea. There we go. So we're going to start with sharks that I've really done most of my own work on, which are the carpet sharks, the Erectolobiformes, if you care about the Latin. So sort of one of the most iconic species of shark in the world, and it's hard to believe it's a carpet shark in some ways, but is the whale shark, the largest fish species, and it has a really interesting ecology. It's what I've done the most work on. And it's evolved to be a filter feeding shark. Which has there are only 2 other species, and both of those are either deep water or cold water species. And the whale shark has adapted filter feeding to a tropical environment, which is quite interesting because tropical environments are usually very plankton poor. So here in the Arabian Peninsula, it can be very useful to think of the whale shark as being something of a desert animal, that it's gotten very good at moving long distances, going from oasis to oasis to find food. And we've done a lot of work here tracking them. We've done a lot of work here at a hotspot down in a leaf. And so whale sharks, they're distributed all across the world, but there are very few known hotspots where you can reliably go and take a boat out and search at the surface, get in the water, and then see a shark and get in the water and swim with it. And we're very lucky here in Saudi Arabia to have one of these hotspots. There are only about 15 maybe of them known around the world. Moving on, staying in the same order, but moving on to a different family. We have the nurse sharks. We have one nurse shark species here in the Red Sea. It's the tawny nurse shark. And here you can see that we've collected this footage. You can see that there's a sort of bait arm. There's a cage full of bait at the end of this arm. This method is called a BRUV, B-R-U-V. It stands for baited remote underwater video. So we basically toss a camera rig off the boat. It's got with an arm of bait, and it takes footage, and we see what we see. We go through all of the footage, and we just see what's there. And we do this a lot here in the reefs in the Red Sea, just as a way of assessing fish populations. So the nurse shark it's very closely related to the whale shark, but has a very different lifestyle. It hangs out in the shallows, hangs out on the bottom, and forages for invertebrates. It forages for shellfish, it forages for crustaceans, and it crushes them. It's got really solid crushing teeth. And one of the sort of more specialized things that it does is it has very powerful suction. It can suck a conch straight out of its shell. It's about 12 vacuum cleaners worth of suction force. And it just gets up close, turns the conch over, seals its mouth around the opening, and sucks the flesh straight out of the shell. It's a very cool animal. I've worked a little bit with these. We worked a bit with them in aquaria. Their skin is extremely tough. We used to bend syringe needles trying to get blood samples out of these things. It's an incredibly tough animal, and very docile. I mean, you never have to worry about this shark. It's just hanging out on the bottom. They will respond if you harass them. And with that 12 vacuum cleaners worth of suction, divers who've harassed them have ended up with their entire arm just stuck in the shark's mouth. And that's just a bad situation for an otherwise docile animal. So even though it tends to leave people alone, it'll do that as long as you leave them alone. It's just typical PADI rules, you know, look but don't touch. Very, very cool animal. I've always really, really liked nurse sharks for a couple of, for various reasons. They're very easy to work with in aquaria. The last one of the carpet sharks that we get in the Red Sea is the zebra shark. You may look at its color patterning and go, you know, why is that a zebra? Looks much more leopard spotted, but when they're born, they have zebra stripes. We used to actually think these were two species, and they had two different names, because you'd see the juveniles and it would have zebra stripes, and then you'd see the adults and they've got leopard spots. And so they thought they were two species for a while, just because the color patterning was so different. But then they started seeing the sort of teenagers, the ones that are transitioning from one color patterning to the other, and it's quite pretty seeing the transitional form. You've got zebra stripes sort of breaking up into leopard spots. It's quite striking. This species is much like the nurse shark. It forages on the bottom. It forages for invertebrates. It has crushing teeth. These sharks, unlike a lot of the sort of characteristic of the carpet sharks, they're very capable of stopping and just resting on the bottom. They don't need to keep swimming in order to ram ventilate their gills. So a lot of times if you see these on the reef, they'll just be sort of hanging out on the bottom, resting. It's very sort of sedentary, very sessile lifestyle. But they're beautiful. And you can see that this is probably, and it's weird, but this is probably the closest living relative to the whale shark. And you can sort of see it. They've got the ridges, they've got the spots, but otherwise their lifestyles are so different. And it's just one of the sort of cool stories when you're looking at sharks and how they relate. How do you get this very bizarre form that lives so differently with the whale shark? So those are the three carpet shark species that we have in the Red Sea. So before I move on and cover the sort of the reef sharks, the ground sharks, do we have any questions about the carpet sharks?
Still any questions? Let me check. We don't have any question. Maybe
Great.
Issam or Nouf, do you have any question?
No.
Cool. I'll keep going then. Just keep it going. So this is the Carchariniformes, or the ground sharks, is the largest group of sharks. There's about 230 species globally. We have about 23 species here. And so here, like, you've got, within there you have Carcharinidae, which is the family of requiem sharks. And these are the sharks that most people think of when they think sharks. These are, you've got your big predatory form. You've got your apex predators and your mesopredators. And so the shark in the picture here is a tiger shark. You can sort of see the stripe pattern name. But this is a very general predator. These things will eat anything. Like when you hear talk about sharks having tin cans in their stomach, or a torpedo shell from World War II, it's a tiger shark almost every time. And that's because they're very generalized. They will scavenge. They will eat anything they can find, and we typically think of them as coastal, but they're quite capable of moving into the open ocean. And they will occasionally visit reefs. And so tiger sharks are extremely opportunistic. They'll go where the food is, but they're also quite cautious. People think of tiger sharks as one of the species that can attack people. And they can, and they occasionally do. And they've got really nasty teeth if they do attack, and that's unfortunate in those rare incidents. But they're so cautious, it's amazing that they ever attack anyone. They'll stalk something for an hour, for 20 minutes, an hour before they'll ever move in and strike at it. So it's interesting how different the personality of the animal can be from the sort of general image that we have of them. But because they're generalists, because they will attempt to eat anything, just being opportunistic, they also have a lot of mechanisms for avoiding, for when they eat something toxic. And the major mechanism that they have is they can turn their entire stomach inside out, outside of their mouths. It's called egesting their stomach. And so at that point, the stomach is outside in the water, getting cleaned out with salt water. And then they just suck it right back in, and they're fine. So when you are willing to eat torpedo shells, being able to get rid of it, being able to get rid of food that just you can't tolerate is an important mechanism. Moving on from the tiger shark.
I have just a small question before we move. Is the way sharks are considered from the sharks family?
So the whale sharks are definitely sharks. Let me just cut back to the whale shark for a second. So you can sort of see it on the side right in front of the fins. They've got gills. Their tail is vertical rather than horizontal. So if they were a mammal, all marine mammals, their tail is horizontal. They have all of the characteristics of a shark. Their skeleton is made out of cartilage. The males have claspers. That's characteristic of chondrichthyans, of just all cartilaginous fish. Their skin's made out of teeth. Their scales are actually true teeth. They've got it's got a dental pulp. It's got everything that you would associate with a tooth. So each of their individual scales is actually a tooth, which is I always thought was interesting. But no, they're definitely sharks. They don't have lungs. They can't breathe air. They don't produce milk. They're not mammals. So yeah, they're just a very, very specialized and bizarre form of shark. Absolutely a shark.
And the second question, what is the difference between the tiger shark and the sand tiger shark?
So the difference between the tiger shark and the sand tiger shark, the sand tiger shark, we do supposedly get in the Red Sea. I've never seen one, and I've never even seen them in a fish market. And it's not surprising that I'd actually be interested if Issam has ever seen one in the Red Sea, because if you get really any kind of fishing pressure, it's one of the first things to go. They are slow to mature, and they only ever produce twins. So they can't really tolerate any kind of fishing pressure. It's an interesting story, just people might like it, but when you hear people talk about sharks eating themselves, eating each other in the womb, they're talking about sand tiger sharks. That's why they only ever give birth to twins, because they have two uteruses, and the first fetus to develop teeth in each uterus goes and kills all of its siblings and then eats them throughout the course of pregnancy. The differences between sand tiger sharks and tiger sharks, they look very different. The sand tiger shark is a really bizarre animal. It will gulp air in order to do buoyancy. It's the only shark that does it. Sand tiger is just very bizarre biologically. It does a lot of behaviors that no other shark does. The sibling eating in the womb, gulping air for buoyancy. It's in a different order. It's not very close. They're not very closely related at all. And it's just one of the things with common names. That common names, there's a reason, scientists don't use the Latin just to be like snooty. We use the Latin so that we can make sure we're all talking about the same thing. And the sand tiger shark's a really good example, because it's got like 3 or 4 different common names: gray nurse shark, ragged tooth shark, sand tiger shark, sand shark. And a lot of those names, like some of those names, can get applied to other sharks, particularly sand shark. Gets applied to a lot of different sharks. So using Carcharias taurus, it's just a way for scientists to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So yeah, the sand tiger shark and the tiger shark are extremely different, just biologically. It's just the coincidence with the common names.
So before you continue, Doctor, do you have any footage can you share with us, or any link maybe later for the tiger shark stomach coming out for a cleaning?
I have a colleague who has a video of it. I'll look. I can look quickly during one of the other talks, see if I can find some footage of a tiger shark ingesting its stomach. It's actually cool. When the tiger shark. So we talked about the sand tiger shark eating each other in the womb. The tiger shark is also unique in that the mother will secrete almost like a milk, a protein-rich fluid into the uterus, and the fetuses in the tiger shark will be inside the womb with their stomachs turned inside out, just absorbing that fluid directly. Sharks are really cool from a reproductive standpoint, just in how many different ways they have of nourishing the embryo. You know, you go from egg laying all the way up to, very similar to a human, a placenta. Sharks are just cool. There's so many interesting stories to just do a deep dive into. So are we good? Go past the tiger shark? Do we have any other questions?
No.
Cool. All right. So we're still in the same family. This is still requiem sharks. But the tiger shark was a very sort of generalized predator. It can do the open ocean. It can do coastal environments. It's just very opportunistic. It's going to go where the food is. These two sharks are pelagic predators. If you see them, it means you're offshore. There are a couple of dive sites where there are a couple of dive sites that specialize in these animals. But in the southern areas of the Red Sea, in southern, particularly in the southern areas where I've dived in Saudi, the silky, this shark right here on the left, is much more common. And as you go north, it starts to get replaced by the oceanic whitetip. So the oceanic whitetip, there's a couple of dive sites off of Egypt where which are some of the best places in the world to see these animals. And both of these animals, so if we think of the open ocean as being something like a desert, both of these animals have to be very aware of their opportunities to feed. Both of these animals have to take advantage of any opportunity they get to eat, because they don't know when they're going to eat again, because food in the open ocean is so scarce. So when you're diving with these animals, they can be very curious, and they can even be aggressive. Mostly, they like to come in and investigate things. They'll swim very close to people. They're not used to anything in their environment really messing with them, so they have quite a bit of confidence approaching divers. And yeah, and they will occasionally, it's one of those things where you need to be aware of what you're comfortable with and whether or not, the animal is being a little too curious. And if you're uncomfortable, just get out of the water, get back on the boat. There's a lot of easy ways to avoid incidents. But they're not usually like attacks. Again, shark attacks are rare, extremely rare. And usually attacks by these animals are relatively minor. There have been a few fatalities, particularly with the oceanic whitetip. But there's a lot of people diving safely with these animals, follow the dive guides, and don't ever harass the animal, and you should be fine. These are really, particularly the oceanic whitetip has a couple of interesting hunting strategies with the white tips. If you get out in the middle of the open ocean, the gray sort of fades out and you can still see the white tips. And the oceanic whitetip actually eats things which are much faster than it. You'll occasionally find tuna in the stomach contents of oceanic whitetips. And they think the oceanic whitetip isn't anywhere near fast enough to catch a tuna. And they think what's happening is the tuna is actually coming to the white tip because it sees the white tips as a school of small fish that maybe the tuna wants to eat. So it actually swims to the white tip, and then the white tip is able to get the jump on it and kill it.
Why they are named oceanic white tip shark if they could be found in the sea?
So they're called the oceanic white tip to sort of distinguish them from the white tip reef shark, which is it's got white tips on its fins, but it's very different ecology. I actually have a picture later in this talk. Actually, I think it's the next slide of the white tip reef shark. And oceanic, you could also call it the pelagic white tip, and it would mean the same thing. It just means it's out in the open ocean, swimming in the middle of nowhere. You've got to find, you need to get very far offshore to places to encounter these things regularly. There are a couple of offshore island dives that off of Egypt where they see these things quite regularly, and it's predictable. And you can go on a liveaboard and reliably go see an oceanic white tip. Which is lovely. They're a really pretty animal. The Red Sea is the best place in the world to see them. They exist throughout the global ocean, but the Red Sea really is one of the best places in the world to see them.
True.
So I have another question. Is the Wobbegong shark available in the Red Sea?
No, the Wobbegong is a carpet shark. And they mostly occur around Australia. There's a species that occurs in Japan. They're really pretty. They're really cool looking. Wobbegong means beard in Aboriginal, and really coral looking stuff up around their mouth. That's where the name derives from. And it's just a really cool ambush predator animal. I wish we had them in the Red Sea. I really like wobbegongs, but unfortunately, no, we don't get them. They don't really have the open ocean swimming capabilities to really disperse far from Australia. Going up to Japan was pretty much their sort of furthest exodus. But yeah, so no, we don't get them in the Red Sea, sadly.
That's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is there another question?
I'll keep the rest of the question till the end when you finish.
No, go for it. Go for it. Questions are great. I love questions.
What attracts the shark to humans?
So usually, like, sharks aren't particularly attractive to humans. A lot of dives where they want to show you sharks in many parts of the world, those dives have to be baited. They're not really interested in people. And in fact, a lot of sharks are very wary of anything that's unfamiliar to them. It's not that they're particularly wary of people, it's that sharks get big, they grow slowly. There's a huge amount of investment in becoming an adult shark and becoming that big, and dying for whatever reason is a waste of investment. So even though they're big and you would think of them as confident apex predators, a lot of the times they're extremely cautious because they don't really need to eat all that often. So they won't go through these big risks to get food. When they do land food, they're usually eating a lot. You know, if a shark kills a tuna, that's a ton of food, and they're cold-blooded, so they don't have to spend all of that energy maintaining a body temperature. So if a shark gets a big meal, that meal can last it about a month. They might not have to eat again for a month. So unless they're starving, they're not really going to take big risks to get food. And they're usually not very familiar with people. So coming and attacking a person is a huge risk. It doesn't know if you're toxic. It doesn't know if you have some bizarre defense mechanism. And a lot of times we do have just with technology, we have very bizarre defense mechanisms. So so sharks are not particularly attracted to people. The things that they're killing and eating in the water are much more elusive and graceful in the water than we are. If they wanted to attack people, they would not waste their time attacking anything else. We are so poorly suited for the water. We are so poorly adapted for the ocean. A 3-meter shark, a 2-meter shark could simply annihilate any person it wanted to in the water. They're so perfectly adapted for that environment. We are so poorly adapted for that environment that if they were attracted to humans, we would never go in the water. The fact that we have millions of people going in the water on a regular basis and attacks are so rare is a testament to how disinterested they are in us.
That's great.
I agree. You're absolutely right, Jason.
Thank you, Carmen. So we had the generalist predator with the tiger shark. We had the pelagic predators with the silkie and the oceanic white tip. So these are the reef specialists, and there are a few other reef specialists that are less common, but these are the Indo-Pacific big three. So not just in the Red Sea, but throughout the Indian and Pacific Oceans, these are the big three reef sharks. And what you have is you've got the white tip reef shark over here on the left, and you can see the white tips. You've got the gray reef shark, and you can tell the gray reef shark because it always has this black margin on the back of its tail. It's just very clear coloration characteristic. That's a gray reef shark. Here in the Red Sea, the gray reef sharks we get also typically have this white tip on the dorsal fin. And then down here we have the black tip reef shark. So I've been on dives off of a Leith where I saw all three of these sharks on the same dive. And they're all really well adapted mesopredators, really well adapted to reef environments, but they can split the reef between them quite effectively. What biologists call niche partitioning. Just, you do your thing, I do mine. The white tip is very good at getting into the reef structure. It's excellent at getting into holes and crevices and just rooting fish or other animals out of these hard to reach places. They're extremely flexible. They're very slender. A lot of times when you have fishermen setting out fish traps, the white tip will find its way into the fish trap and eat all of the other fish in the fish trap. So they're really quite good at getting into crevices, and they eat morays that are almost as big as they are. So a lot of times when you go to reefs that don't have sharks anymore, either the sharks have been fished out or whatever, the moray eels are just much more confident. They're not trying to stay in the reef at all. They're swimming out freely. It's something that we've noticed just looking at reefs where sharks just aren't there anymore. So the white tip focuses on stuff that's in the reef structure. This gray reef shark, you'll see them, they'll just patrol along the reef edge. Where there's a drop off, you'll see them just swimming up and down the reef edge, looking for things that are swimming out in the water column. Just swimming out in the water, not within the reef, but around the reef edge. And then the black tip shark, if you go up over the top of the reef in the very shallow sections of the reef, they will eat stuff in the water column in those shallow areas, so up on the reef flat. So you've got these three, you could put them in the same category. You've got these three mesopredator reef sharks, but they specialize into different hunting styles and into different areas of the reef that they target. So they can all coexist without really competing with each other.
How big can the reef sharks grow?
So the white tip can get to be about 2 meters maximum. These gray reef sharks, they get bulkier than the white tips. And in other places, especially like in Australia, they can get a little bit aggressive and they can be a little bit territorial. And they have occasionally bitten people. They do this very weird sort of display when they're agitated and they want you to back off. Their pec fins go down, they sort of spring load their back. It looks like almost like a cat arching its back. So they get bulkier, but they don't ever get very big. 1.5 meters, maybe 2 meters on the outside. But that would be like a maximum size individual. That individual is done very, very well. And then the black tips, 1.5 meters, roughly the same size ranges for all of them. These animals are pretty harmless. Even if they bit you, it would be more like a dog bite than something you would associate with a shark bite. If you see one of these on a reef, just enjoy it. You're lucky. I mean, these are probably the most common sharks you'll see on dives, but you don't see a shark every dive. So you see one of these, you don't really need to worry about it. It's a cool shark. These are, any shark is cool. You don't see a shark on every dive. So yeah, it's just lucky. It's a good dive.
Yes, nice.
Yeah.
Is there any attack cases with sharks in the Red Sea, and why it is so famous attack news in Australia, for example?
So yes, there have been attacks in the Red Sea. Most of those attacks have been from oceanic whitetips. Because they are so curious, because they do have to at least a few of those attacks were in baited dives that were run poorly off of some Egyptian tourism, and there have been some reforms in how those tours are conducted. There have been a few fatalities, mostly when you're talking about. And then, okay, so yes, we have had shark attacks in the Red Sea. That was the first part of that question. It's mostly oceanic whitetips. You might occasionally have a few silky bites. And then in the worst case scenario, you would have, it would be a tiger shark, right? But tiger shark attacks, I haven't heard of very many. I don't know of the records that I'm familiar with. There was a spate of attacks in Egypt in 2010. And I believe there was another set of attacks off of, I think the Brothers Islands, also Egypt, in 2018. So most of the attacks that I'm familiar with have been oceanic whitetips. I think there's one record of an attack from a mako, but that's extremely bizarre. Makos don't usually have the teeth to do a whole lot of actually a whole lot of tissue damage. They've got needle teeth, and yeah, it would hurt, but if somebody took 1,000 needles and jammed them into your arms, it would hurt badly, but it's not going to take the arm off. So something like a mako attacking is just bizarre. And it's one of those things where shark attacks are just something unpredictable, something that you can't really control, but because they're so rare, there's not a whole lot of data to go on to try and study them effectively. The other part of that question was, why are attacks in Australia so much worse? And the answer there is that so when you're looking at shark attacks, when you're looking at dangerous sharks, there's two things you're really looking at. It's like sharks that are aggressive or curious about people. And then you're looking at the type of teeth that those sharks have. Like, I've been in the water with blue sharks, and a lot of divers think of blue sharks at like dogs. And I think that really applies. They're curious, they come out, they swim at you, they're like bumping into you. But they're kind of small, their teeth aren't really that dangerous. Whereas something like in Australia, you're talking about great whites, you're talking bull sharks, and you're talking tiger sharks. And there, the dentition is completely different. You've got these very broad, triangular, serrated teeth that's designed for killing things like dolphins, and that's really good for hunting things that are bigger than the shark's mouth. Most sharks have either needle teeth, which are good for attacking small things, getting a bunch of needles into them so that the small thing can't get away, and then eating them. So needle teeth are good for hunting smaller fish. The big triangular teeth are good for hunting big things. And it's that hunting big things that we need to worry about because we fall into that category of big things. And then you've got things like the nurse shark and the zebra shark, which have sort of flat crushing teeth for crushing shellfish. Occasionally you get weird things like the whale shark, which don't really fall into any category. It's just these small file-like teeth, but like 300 rows of them, not really useful for feeding, but it doesn't need them because it eats plankton. So the reason attacks get so much more publicity in Australia is because the species involved are much more likely to kill someone. Does that answer the question?
They need, what is it? Can you share tips on how to avoid shark attack?
So I think that shark attacks are rare, they are unpredictable, and each one of them is very unique. The set of circumstances that lead up to an attack are unique to each situation. So abiling attacks, depending on where you are, like if you're in an area that gets great whites, yeah, don't dive in seal colonies, don't be in areas with high densities of their prey. If you do see an animal, if you're in the water with an animal that you're not comfortable with, get out of the water. That's my #1 tip for avoiding shark attacks. If you're uncomfortable with the situation, get out of the situation. Now, so like in terms of, well, you know, project confidence and, you know, don't let the shark intimidate you and show it that you're a predator. These are tips that you hear people give occasionally, and it's just not something that I would necessarily like be confident saying apply that to every situation, because shark attacks are so unique. Each one of them is different. Sometimes a shark attack is a hunting attack. Like the thing is like, is this food? And it bites someone. Sometimes it's a territorial attack. You've invaded my space and I want you to get out of my space. And in that case, trying to present, oh, I'm being aggressive, might not be the right move. The advice that I would give, if you've got an animal in the water that you're not comfortable with, keep your eye on it, keep facing it. They are very cautious. If they're aware that you're aware of them, they'll be less likely to come in and attack you. And then move slowly away, get back on the boat, get out of the water. It's not going to attack you on the boat.
That's good. How divers should react when they see sharks to avoid incidents?
For the most part, if you see a shark on a dive, enjoy it. The attacks are extremely rare, and seeing sharks is becoming rarer. If you see a shark on a dive, you're very lucky. And divers, with the bubbles, with the rig, divers are very infrequently attacked. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but if you look at, you know, shark attack victims, most of them are people that are most shark attack victims are people who are wading at the beach and they get bit by something small, or they step on a wobbegong, or they step on an angel shark, or, you know, it's people wading at the beach, it's surfers that kind of from the bottom look like seals. It's not divers. Attacks on divers are extremely rare, and the cases where you do have attacks on divers, it's because there's bait in the water, you're on a baited dive, and you get, you know, the shark, or somebody invaded its space. Somebody was harassing the animal. So when we do record shark attacks, we do make a distinction between provoked and unprovoked attacks. So for instance, like when I was talking about somebody grabs a nurse shark's tail and they end up with their entire arm inside the nurse shark's mouth, that's a provoked attack. If you're just surfing and all of a sudden a great white comes up and bumps you off your board and like grabs you, yeah, it's an unprovoked attack. You were just surfing. There's no real simple answer to how to avoid attacks. It's like saying, how do I avoid lightning strikes? You know, they're rare. The very simple answer is, you know, you can avoid it by staying out of the water or don't go outside during a thunderstorm, right? But if you're already in the situation, it's random. If you get unlucky, you got really unlucky. You're more likely to be struck by lightning in the ocean than attacked by a shark. You know, you can run through the statistics. More toilets kill more people.
Why the shark can't see? Is it true that the shark can't see? They don't see, just they just only see one color?
So different species of sharks do have cones, but color sensitivity is going to vary by species. So I'm not like I'm not 100% like I'm not 100% up on the research on shark vision, but some sharks do have sensitivity to certain color wavelengths. I know that it varies by species. I can't really tell you more about that because it's not something that I've ever focused on.
That's great. Questions done.
Great. So these are the reef sharks, and that sort of finishes that particular family. We do get more species in that family, but we get like 16 or 17 of species within this family. So I'm just going to leave it at the three major groups: the general predator, the pelagic predator, and these reef specialists as well. So moving on, we do get two species of hammerhead. We get the great hammerhead, and we get this one. The one in the picture is the scalloped hammerhead. And this is just a really, but you know, obviously it's a very bizarre body plan. And they're closely related to a very particular group of sharks from the previous family. And what you get is you had a massive mutation. So the most primitive one of the hammerheads is this thing called a winghead shark, which has this massive, very narrow hammer. And then progressively you get this sort of more like return to a mix between the hammerhead design and a normal shark design. So like the bonnethead shark is probably the most derived hammerhead. And it has, if you look at a picture of a bonnethead shark, it looks like a cross between a hammerhead and a, you know, typical shark. But the hammerheads are critically endangered. They're very much sought after in the fin trade, especially for their dorsal fins, which are quite tall. They're really interesting predators. Their head shape has really spread out their sensory organs. I had a professor once who he showed me a great hammerhead shark jaw, and he held it out and he's like, look, this is a great hammerhead shark jaw, and you don't need to worry about the tooth shape, you don't need to worry about the jaw morphology. It has 50 stingray spines in it. It's a great hammerhead, because great hammerheads will sort of use their electrosense as almost like a metal detector sweeping over the sand. And they have these little pit organs. All sharks have them. They have these little pit organs in their head that look like pores, right? And if you've got a shark, like on a dissection table or something, you can actually squeeze the pore. You get electrophoretic gel. So it's a gel that responds to electric fields by contracting or expanding. And that activates nerves. So the shark can sense electricity, including the very weak electrical signals emitted by a heartbeat. So the shark goes over the sand and it feels the presence of the stingray. And it pins the stingray to the sand with its head and then eats it, bites it. And the stingray stings the shark, but the shark doesn't care. It's totally immune to the venom. So you have the jaw, it's got 50 stingray spines in it. It's a great hammerhead. They're such cool animals. It's a shame that they're so endangered. Here you probably have to go offshore. You have to go to an offshore island, and you'd have to go a bit deep, maybe down to 30 off of a drop off to see them. And you just gotta you kind of have to get lucky. Go on the dive, go down. You don't have a whole lot of bottom time, and just hope that they swim by. And they are very skittish around people. They're a very shy shark. So you see one swim by, you can't really approach it because it'll just swim away faster. You just got to hope that it'll come to you. These are not dangerous at all. They do have teeth. You can see them in this picture, but their mouth is actually quite small. I'm not sure, but I don't think there are any fatalities from scalloped hammerheads. There might be one from a great hammerhead just because they're so big, but I don't. If you see a hammerhead shark on a dive here, that's really lucky. Like I've only seen hammerheads a few times, and I've been diving in the Red Sea since about 2010. It's one of the sharks that's much more prevalent on the western side of the Red Sea than it is here. And in part of that's because of fishing pressure. But so if you go over to Sudan or you go over to Egypt and you get onto an offshore reef, you go down fairly deep. Yeah, you can see a few schools of 6, 7 of these swimming by. If you're really lucky and you get to go to the Galapagos, you get these big schools of scalloped hammerheads that are around the seamounts, and it's just, oh, how was your dive? It was a kind of a boring dive for the Galapagos. 40 hammerheads, but that's always 40 hammerheads.
The hammerhead shark came in school usually or individually?
So at least in the Galapagos, what they're doing is they'll school around the seamounts during the day, and then they'll go off and be solitary as they hunt at night. And then at dawn, they'll return to the seamount and start circling around the seamount again. And it's very hierarchical. So sharks, the females get bigger, and that's partially because the bigger the female gets, the more pups she can have. And so the big females will keep the littler females off on the periphery of the seamount. The big females and the males will be in the center. And it's sort of a social hierarchy it's a breeding hierarchy. The big females keep the little females out so that they have exclusive access to the males. It's sort of a mixture. To answer your question, it's sort of a hybrid mixture of schooling, not because they need the protection of the school, just because it's where their social interactions happen. And then solitary hunting. So it's a sort of day-night mixture of solitary and schooling.
So I'm done with the question for now.
Great. We will move on. So I think we're going to the next order. So this is the lamniforms, or the mackerel sharks. So when you think great white, you think makos. These are the type of sharks we're talking about. Now, we do not get the great white in the Red Sea. There's a couple of maybe records that are now considered unreliable. So there's no reliable record of the great white in the Red Sea. It totally could come in here. They have an incredibly wide range. It has a huge thermal tolerance for a wide variety of environments. So a great white could definitely come in here, but there's no reliable record of one. There's not really much here for them. We don't have any seals. We don't have any sea lions. There are better hunting grounds for the great white. What we do get short-fin makos. This is the fastest shark. Easily, reliably measured 30, 40 kilometers an hour. You have some sort of anecdotal accounts of them getting up to 50 or 60. Extremely fast shark. And actually one of the few warm-blooded sharks. So they do regulate their body temperature somewhat. It's not it's not, it's sort of a hybrid of warm and cold-blooded. Most animals that breathe water can't maintain full warm-bloodedness just because you lose all of that heat from your gills coming into contact with the water. Water is such a great conductor of heat, but they can keep their body temperatures much higher than the surrounding environment. So they do this by keeping all of the blood, they do this by keeping the heat from their muscles away from their gills. They isolate the gills. The gills are at the sort of environmental temperature, and the rest of their body is maintained at a much warmer temperature. And this is good for them because your muscles work better when they're warmer. So they get more efficient use out of their muscles. They can, which is important for them as they try and hit those top speeds to go and chase really quite fast fish. There is, I think I mentioned this earlier, there is one fatality from this species in the Red Sea, but that incident spawned a paper. It was so unusual that someone was able to publish a paper describing that one incident. This animal, you're probably never going to see it diving. This is something that you need to be on a boat doing some sport fishing offshore. Sport fishermen love these animals. It's like if you're into sport fishing, this thing is a good fight. They'll jump clear of the water to try and get rid of hooks. They're fairly tolerant of catch and release. Because of that warm-bloodedness, they can clear a lot of the sort of stress hormones that come with they can clear the lactic acid. So you put an animal under stress, it produces all of these chemicals in its blood. You put a human under stress, it produces a ton of chemicals in its bloodstream. And if that stress gets bad enough, it can kill you. And the same thing can happen with a lot of sharks. Like the hammerheads, for instance, they don't really tolerate catch and release. They stress out very badly and their heart breaks down. They put so much lactic acid in their blood that it starts destroying their heart. That doesn't typically happen to makos. The warm-bloodedness helps them clear those stress chemicals much more quickly. So this is something you almost need to go like sport fishing to see. I'm mentioning, and that's true of most of the mackerel sharks. I'm mentioning them to just because it is one of the orders that we do see in the Red Sea, and it wouldn't make sense just to pass over an entire order just because you're probably not going to see it diving. If you do see one of these things diving, they're amazing. They can be curious. They'll sort of like dart into the dive group and then dart out. Just checking things out, swimming in, and just so fast. They're really, really cool animals. I'm quite partial to makos. I think it's a really interesting, sleek, cool design and cool body plan. And they're just it's just speed. It's just so fast. The next one, and so just the next, it's in that same order, and it's another thing that if you wanted to actually see it, you'd have to go sport fishing. So this is an expedition that Kaus did with some researchers from the US to catch pelagics, to catch big pelagic like billfish, swordfish, marlin, and some of these pelagic mackerel sharks. So this is a new family. It's still in the Lamniformes, the order of mackerel sharks, but it's the thresher sharks, and there are 3 species globally, and we definitely get 2 of them in the Red Sea. We might get the 3rd. The family name, the name means fox because it's got such a long tail. You can see the tail sort of going up right here. So the thresher sharks, their sort of claim to fame is that the upper lobe of their tail is as long as the rest of their body. And they use that when they're hunting because they'll hunt fast schooling fish, and they'll just slap the school with their tail. It almost looks like a scorpion. They come up and just completely flip and hit the school with their tail. And it'll stun a few fish in the school, and then they'll swim up to the stunned fish and eat them. They're a very, very, it's a bizarre adaptation. It's a lot like the hammerhead, as you've got this extreme adaptation. But it works for them, and it's good at doing the one thing that they use it for. So if you actually look at the vertebra, at the end of the tail, the vertebrae are thicker and heavier toward the end of the tail than you would normally expect. And it's because it's adapted for use as a club or a whip. It's the counterweight at the end of a whip. So here in this expedition, you can see that this shark has a tag in it. This is a satellite tag. And this tag will eventually pop off the animal. And so what it's doing is it's recording light levels and using the time of sunrise, the time of sunset, and the length of the day to estimate where the animal is. And after 6 months or 9 months, depending on how we program the tags, they pop off and go to the surface, start talking to a satellite, and give us the how deep the shark was, and what the estimated positions are, and what the water temperature was at different times. And if we're lucky enough and we actually get the tag back, we actually get measurements every about 5 seconds. You know, we have to be really lucky and get the tag back. Because while it's talking to the satellite, we do get a pretty solid waypoint for where the tag is at. But it has to be somewhere we can go retrieve it. Occasionally, like washed up on shore, stuck on a reef somewhere. But if it washes up on Somalia, we're probably just going to leave it. So just got a few more images of this shark that we tagged just recently. I think that this was tagged in January. And then we released it, and it's off going to collect some data. And this sort of,
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you need more than 10 minutes?
No, I should be good to go. I should be able to finish up. But so that sort of brings us to, okay, those are sort of the major groups of sharks that we see in the Red Sea. And the threats to sharks are pretty much the usual suspects for fish in general. You can go to the fish market and you can see these very big animals that should be breeding, that should be reproducing, being taken out of the population and sold. So often sold, often what will happen is the fins will be removed, the rest of the body will be cut up, processed, and turned into shark steaks, and the fins will be exported to China, to Hong Kong. You also get occasionally some very species-specific threats. For instance, the whale sharks down in Leith, they're a somewhat slow-moving species that spends a lot of time at the surface. So you can end up with blunt trauma. They can get hit by propellers. Now, I want to be clear, this shark was doing fine. It was feeding, it was in a Leith. This trauma happened long before we ever encountered it. So it was doing okay. It was clearly surviving. But we don't know how this affects its long-term survivorship. And when you talk about big, this was a blunt trauma from a fairly small outboard propeller from like a small fishing boat. If you talk about like big shipping lanes where the propeller is enormous, it would simply cut the whale shark in half without slowing down. Nobody on the boat would even notice. So you do have some species-specific threats, and for the whale shark, propellers are probably the big one. But for most of the other species, the real big threat is probably fishing. So the last thing I want to talk about is getting divers involved. I've talked about a couple of ways that we do research on sharks here. I talked about grubs very briefly. I showed off the satellite tagging that we did on the fresher shark. Those are pretty specialized techniques. The satellite tags are expensive. The grubs are, you can build them, but it's not really good for anything except shark research. So getting divers involved, the one type of research that we do, which we really want to get divers involved with, is photo identification. And we want to get divers involved for sharks, but we also do this for turtles, we do this for mantas. So we just like, if you're on a dive and you see something cool and you're just filling out your logbook, right? You're just filling out your dive log, collect, date and time that you saw the animal, take a note of the behavior, where were you? If you can, just give a rough visual estimate of the size. That's, and if you have a camera, collecting photos. So for like the whale sharks, the spot pattern is unique to the individual and we can use it as a fingerprint. And it's just the area around the pec fin, right behind the gills. And if you can get under the shark, if the shark swims over you, you can look between its pelvic fins. And if it's got these two little finger things, that's male. If they aren't there, that's female. If you see any interesting scars, like this one's got a couple of what look like propeller marks on its right under its dorsal fin along its body, great, take a picture of that too.
Can I tell the attendees that we will have a special webinar about whale sharks soon?
Yep. Yeah. So I did most of my work on whale sharks in Elite. That's what I did my PhD on, and I love talking about sharks in general, but I can quite easily do like a whole talk, and I'm very willing to do a whole talk on whale sharks. They're such a cool animal. It's really easy to just talk about them for forever. I can drone on for hours about sharks, in whale sharks in particular. So with mantas, the spot that we're looking at is the underside. We can use the spot pattern and the shape of the spot pattern sort of in between these gills and on the underside. Other prominent markings, you can see this one has what looks like a shark bite taken out of the back of it. And also, I mean, melanistic manta, they're just really pretty. This sort of very all black color morph. It's quite rare, but we do occasionally see it here in the Red Sea. It's really quite pretty. So for shark and ray identification, I talked about this briefly. The males have claspers, which are these extensions of the pelvic fin, and they can be quite small in juveniles, but they get bigger as the sharks get older. And it's essentially the male reproductive organ in sharks. And in females, it's just, there's nothing there. They both have the cloaca, both the males and females have the cloaca. It's just the males have the claspers, the females don't. For turtles, what we want is the face. We want the side of the face because we can use the shape of these scales around the face. We can use the sort of juncture points as an ID point, as a fingerprint, much in the same way that we use the spot patterns in the manta or the whale shark. We can use the top of the shell from above, and also like barnacles on the shell, other prominent markings similar to the scars on the whale sharks or the mantas. We also are starting collaboration with some researchers on the other side. So if you get pictures of any shark, I don't care what species, there's going to be an email at the end of this. It's my last slide. Please send them, send us your shark pictures. We want to ID them. We'll tell you what species they are. If we can ID it down to the individual and we haven't seen it before, we'll let you name it. We'll tell you everything you want to know about that shark or that turtle or that manta. So send us your shark photos. If it's a species we're interested in, we'll process it, we'll do everything. If it's a species that one of our colleagues is interested in, we'll make sure it gets to the right place. Just send us all of if you see something big and interesting and you want to send us a photo, we really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Doctor.
And that's it.
I have last question. Does the shark bands, the shark bands, is it real that affecting the shark attack, or it's fake and real, just for marketing to sell them?
What's the shark? The
shark bands. It's like a watch. You put it on your hand that it's affecting the shark attack.
So there's a couple. So shark repellents have a mixed history. There's been, like, the U.S. Navy did some research. There is, my understanding is one of the more effective things is something you can attach to a fin and it connects to like a generator on the BCD, and it generates an electrical signal that irritates the shark's electrosensory organs. And yes, that would, I've seen some footage of that being quite effective. The shark gets repelled, gets turned around. I've also seen, I've read anecdotal reports that as soon as you turn it off, the shark is just annoyed, and you have to keep repelling it. Shark repellents, it's almost a solution without a problem. Shark attacks are so rare that trying to solve them is almost a fool's. It is extremely difficult because we don't have enough data to really process it. Those electrical repellents are probably the closest we've gotten to something that's genuinely successful, but they tend to be expensive and not really worth the effort. You encounter sharks on so few dives, and most of the time it's just lucky. Most of the time you're really happy to see a shark because they're cool. It's one of the reasons people get into diving, is because sharks are just amazing. So I think it's a solution without a problem for the most part. The people who really needed shark protection usually don't have it because nobody really prepares for a 1 in a million incident like that. And you never know that you're going to need it. And shark attacks are so rare anyway that most of the time you're just happy to see a shark on a dive.
Thank you, Doctor, for tonight, for your very interesting information. We get promised from you before we start that we will have a special webinar about whale sharks. So everyone now is asking me when it will be the whale sharks.
Just let me know. You know, with lockdown and everything, my schedule is pretty flexible. I'm happy to. I'm always happy to talk about sharks.
That's great. Now we will move to Captain Issam. Captain Issam, he will share with us his experience diving with sharks. He dove in Florida with sharks.
Hello again.
Yep.
Different places, not just Florida. Okay, good evening, everybody. And sharks. I love sharks. But before I talk about sharks, I want to say a couple of things related to how you can avoid shark attacks in the water. Do not throw yourself in the fire if you don't know how to put it off. Meaning, if you don't understand the behavior of a shark, don't go after it. Understand and learn about sharks is the most effective way for you to avoid accidents that are extremely rare. When you dive in groups, let's say 5, 6 divers, 8, 10, whatever the number is, and you encounter a shark, don't chase it because it's going to pull you out in the blue water, and you are going to be standing suspended in the water all alone. You can be an easy target in case of an attack, which is again extremely rare. So stay with your group, keep together, and don't leave your dive buddies and you go on your own. That's another thing. Speaking of the shark repellents, why would you want one? You are defeating the objective of a nice dive. Okay, I would definitely never want to wear one. And if any of my diving fellows is wearing one, I would not want to be with them in the water, because on each and every dive I go, I pray to see sharks. So nowadays you are lucky if you encounter sharks of any kind, of any species. I have been diving the Red Sea myself since 1997, and that's a long, long time. Since 97 until today, I have seen a dramatic change in the environment, in the water. It used to be very common to see sharks in Jeddah, Now it's near impossible. You have to go out in the open sea. You have to go to remote areas. Maybe you have to go up north or down south. So if you are ever going to encounter a shark, don't use a repellent. If you have one, turn it off. You would want the shark to come close because you want to enjoy. Also, I'd like to say that we as human are not on the list of their menu list. Absolutely not. They are the least interested in human. I traveled the world. I've been to different places. I have seen sharks here. I have seen sharks in the US. And one of the things that I do as well is I affiliate with the shark diving operators around the globe and organize dive trips. Somebody asked about baited shark dives and how legal is that, and is this possible, or is it okay, is it not okay? Well, it all depends how you behave on a shark baited dive. You can act stupid, excuse my language, and you can act responsible. And yet again achieve your target and attract sharks in a safe manner. Again, sharks are not interested in us. They are interested in what we have when it comes to feeding. I have a very short video I'd like to share with you, which I filmed in Florida, of a girl called Autumn Sherman. She's very known in West Palm Beach. And I will be sharing this video with you shortly. It's a very long video that I have shortened down to 2 minutes. So hopefully you will enjoy.
I'm Autumn Sherman. I am 22 years old, and I was born in little on the outskirts of Detroit, Michigan. And I actually moved to Florida about 30 minutes east of Orlando when I was 2 years old. I got certified as an open water student about 5 years ago, and had just seen nurse sharks or a reef shark going by in the reef. And I thought, wow, these things are absolutely beautiful underwater. Seeing how beautiful the shark was in the water and how it really didn't want anything to do with us. If anything, the shark was afraid of us. Just absolutely beautiful. And I thought, I want to get closer to these sharks. I want to learn more about them. So I decided to start doing shark diving, because you have to be advanced in nitrox to shark dive. You need that experience. So I became those and decided to do shark dives every week, and driving down 2 hours from Orlando to go on the shark dives every weekend, and just absolutely fell in love with it. It changed my perspective on sharks completely. They're not the man-eaters that people put them out to be. Just absolutely beautiful. I would just like to say thank you for coming here and being able to share my story and see what I do and just make this world a better place.
Thank you, Issam. Very nice video.
Thank you. Well, basically, what I wanted to show you with this video is that we are not on the list of the shark. This was a baited shark dive, which was done very reasonably and responsibly. And you have noticed that Autumn and everybody else within the group, we were all suspended in mid-water. That was about 15 to 20 meters max. Unlike when you go and dive the Bahamas with the tiger sharks, you are on the bottom sandy floor while doing the feeding. This is completely different. And again, they came, they had the fish, they ate, and off they left. So don't be afraid of sharks. Understand and learn about them. Know the behavior of sharks and how to deal with them. They are different. They are driven by instinct. Each species act differently. Some are shy, like the hammerhead, as Dr. Jesse was mentioning. Lemon sharks are extremely nosy. Like, for example, when I am filming underwater and my camera flashes or strobes are spread wide open, I make sure to bring my lights closer to my camera, because I guarantee you, your light is going away in a shark's mouth. Not because they're interested and they want to eat it, it's just because they are very nosy. So this is the behavior of lemon sharks. They are very well known about being nosy, and they like to investigate, just like the oceanic whitetips. Anyhow, I do not want to take any more of your time. If you are interested in shark diving, let us know. Hopefully in September we are planning one in Bali.
Yes,
right?
and Gili Island. We
Bali.
already
So
planned, if everything will be okay. I will be in Bali, and Issam maybe in Gili Island on a shark point. We will dive with shark. It's a very nice place to dive for sharks and film sharks.
yes, and also one thing I'd like to mention, I am looking for fellow divers to film me with sharks, because I normally film people and no one does film me. So I'll give you a discount. Great. Back to you, Rabia.
Thank you, Captain Issam. And now we have our beauty diver, our pride ambassador, Captain Nouf. She will talk to us about her experience with sharks.
Hi, everyone. Let me just share my presentation first. Okay. Okay. So most of the divers who wants to start their open water course, they ask me, the first question I usually get that, is there any sharks? Is there any sharks attacking the Red Sea? And my first response is, I've been diving in the Red Sea for a quite long time, and I haven't lost anything of part of my body. So there are not a lot of sharks attack at the Red Sea. All right, so this is usually the biggest fear. How my mom sees sharks. This is how my mom sees sharks, and most of the people, right? So they think they are a man-eater, or they just attack without any reason. And this is usually from the media, and especially from Jaws movie. And most of the films and the Hollywood movies, they destroyed the shark image. Like the news now, they changed the realities, and most of the people, they just believe what they see. All right, so we grow up with this terrible movies and horror movies about sharks. So I don't blame them. Okay, and this is how us divers and I see sharks. We are the monsters here, not sharks, because we kill more sharks than sharks kill us. Okay, and this is mainly from the shark fin soups, or overfishing, or bycatch. And we are more likely to be we are more likely to be dead by coconut falling on our head, or vintage machine, or lighting stuck. And there are many different ways to be to lose your life than just being attacked by sharks. Okay, and Dr. JC, he mentioned a lot of things about these things, so I'm just gonna support his talk. And this is the number of sharks that being killed from human, and this is the number of the sharks attack. And we have like roughly 15 human sharks attack per year, and we kill usually 100 million shark per year. Okay, so this is a huge number. So who's the monster here? Okay, and this is another number here. Okay, so mainly a lot of people, they ask why there are a sharks attack, and Dr. JC, he mentioned that usually the attacks happen from the great white shark because they mistake humans because they look like a seal, which is their favorite food, or a sea lion, especially the surface in South Africa and Australia. So that's why we hear a lot of attacks are happening in these areas than the Red Sea and the small seas. Because of the great white shark. And it's not, they don't attack because they love humans, because we don't really live in the sea, we live on land. So do you guys eat kangaroo here in Saudi, kangaroo? No, because it doesn't live in our environment, but in Australia they may eat kangaroo. Okay, and yeah. Okay, let's go again to the other slide. So usually when sharks attack, they don't eat a whole human being because we taste disgusting to the sharks. We're not their favorite foods. So it's completely opposite to what we used to know about sharks and what we used to think about shark and the image that we used to have. Okay, and this is the number of the shark extinction in the world. And I think this is Dr. JC can support this, like how many, the drop in sharks number. And here there's like 79% in great white shark, 80% in thresher shark, 79% in tiger sharks. And it's a huge number. It's not easy. And later, Captain Issam, he will talk more about how can we all get involved and how can we protect the sharks through some courses. Okay, so how I started to love sharks and how my story started with sharks. I used to be like non-diver, so I didn't have a lot of information about the sea. And when I started to learn scuba diving and my first encounter with the shark, it changed the whole idea about sharks because they were so peaceful. They just passing by. They didn't even give me any attention. So I was really shocked. Is this just the sharks that we used to see in the movies? It's different shark. This is the real shark. The thing we see in the movies are bullshit. I'm sorry, excuse my language. It's horrible what we see in the movies. So I'll share with you here some of the videos that I've been, some of my videos, some of them in Yombo, in Sudan, and usually most of the videos are in the Red Sea. And now in this video, you're gonna see the real sharks and how they don't attack, and they're just peaceful animals, they're majesty, and they are amazing animals, and they are really responsible for the beauty that we see in the Red Sea, like the coral reefs, because they are the top of the food chain, and they attack the dead fish, and they attack also they're in the top of the food chain, so they keep the ocean balanced. And Dr. JC, he mentioned if we lose the sharks, and also Captain Issam, how the sea is going to look like. And the sea, it's provide like more than 50% of the oxygen that we breathe. So we all connected with the ocean, with the sharks, with every living species on this planet. So they are playing a main role in this planet. And they exist here for like more than 14 million years, or formally 14 million years, I guess. Yeah, 14 million years. 400 million years the sharks exist here, right, Dr. JC? 400 million years. So they are here with the dinosaurs, so before even the human being. So let's just go enjoy the videos. The first video is going to be for the silky sharks in Sudan, and I visited the Sudan especially just to enjoy sharks and to see sharks very closely. And There are few sharks that are just passing by, and let's watch the video together.
Very lucky.
So this is us divers when we see sharks. We are lucky when we see sharks because we rarely see them. To be honest, I haven't ever seen shark here in Jeddah or in Saudi Arabia, only in Yumbu and once in Rabiq, and that's it. But in Egypt, I saw a few sharks, like tiger sharks, hammerhead sharks, oceanic shark, and now we're gonna go to see the oceanic shark video as well. No, let's go first to Yombo. Yombo, we saw as also Dr. Jesse mentioned, here in Saudi we have the white tip reef sharks, and this is the most of the sharks that we usually see in Saudi. And this video in Yombo.
This is in Yamba.
So the first video, the shark, they just passed by and they ignored me, totally ignored me. And this one, the shark just swam away close to the reef out in the blue. They're beautiful. Let's go again to the last video. Okay, and this is the oceanic white tip shark, which is one of my favorite sharks. We usually see this shark when we go live abroad in Egypt, especially south to the Brothers Island or to the Daedalus Elphinstone's reefs in Egypt. And this shark, they swim close to the boats and from 0 to 6 meters. And they are pelagic sharks. They stay in the open ocean or offshore. And they are pretty amazing. So let's watch this video. And oh, it's happening. Hold on. ايش بعلق؟ Okay. That's the boats there. And that's us here. Okay, so the sharks usually also, they play a main role in the economy. So this shark in Egypt, people, they just go there to watch this shark. It's provides a lot of money to Egypt by shark tourism. So sharks, they have a lot of benefits, not just to the environment, but also to the economy as well. And I hope you enjoyed my small shark story. And I hope also we all dive together again after this crisis, and the ocean's get healthier and better, and we can see hopefully more sharks than we used to see. I can't hear you.
Thank you, Nouf. We really enjoy your experience. It was a great night. Before ending, I'd like to share something about the shark conservation. And 1 second, it will be.
Nearly 1 in every 5 shark species is on the brink of extinction. Without sharks, healthy and...
Sorry.
Nearly 1 in every 5 shark species is on the brink of extinction. Without sharks, healthy and diverse ocean ecosystems that divers care so deeply about are at risk. It's time to stand up for sharks before it's too late. Here's how you can help make a difference. Sign the shark petition on projectaware.org. These petitions help us put pressure on leaders to close loopholes and policies that affect sharks in the countries that matter most. Make shark protection a political priority by writing your local and national government representatives to lobby for change. Speak out in your own community. Lead, organize, and use the resources on projectaware.org. And join thousands of divers working together to get shark species off the endangered list forever. Join the movement by going to projectaware.org to make a difference.
Thank you so much. Also, who is interested about shark conservation, he can contact us directly, me, Nouf, Issam, and we can send him the material, and there's knowledge review, and he can receive his shark conservation specialist from PADI, and he can know more about sharks. Also, I think Dr. Jesse, he shared his email on the beginning. Who have any questions about sharks, he can send him email directly. He's more expert than us scientifically. Also, we will share a new date for the whale shark conservation. We'll keep you updated. Thank you so much. Issam, do you have anything before we finalize? Do you want?
No, thank you so much, Rabia. Thank you for everybody. Thank you for everyone who attended this. We look forward to see you in the future. As Rabia said, if you have any question, you can just communicate to us, and we will be glad to help you.
Dr. Jesse?
Yeah.
Do you have anything would like to share with us?
So I could, the one thing I really want to share with the diver community is I just want to make sure everybody has the email for sending off their megafauna photos. If you see something cool, it really does help. Some of the largest data sets on megafauna images have come from citizen scientists, have come from people making individual contributions, but collectively it does add up. So I can post that to the chat. I could, or I could give it to what do you want? What would be the best way for me to do that? Because that really is the most useful link from our point of view for this. That making divers aware of where to send their images when they see something cool for us to benefit from it scientifically.
Thank you, Nouf.
Sorry, Rabia, if I can answer you on this, maybe if you'd like to have a single point of contact, Rabia and I are willing to help and assist in collecting materials from our fellow divers and have them sent to you. And of course, that will be with the credit of the photographer, of the person who had taken the photo, and all the details. If this is, if that's to your liking, we can do that.
Oh, absolutely. We really do want to make, as many connections with the local dive community as possible, because it's a massive resource. The local divers are in the water much more often than the scientists are, and if we can just get as many eyes in the water as we can, it's a lot of data, and scientists love data.
I think Alex he shared again the email that if someone he want to share some pictures, the Red Sea photo ID @gmail.com.
Yep. Anything big, anything, sharks, turtles, mantas, rays. We know people who would be interested in anything you see. We'll make sure it gets to the right place.
Mermaids.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nouf.
Perfect. Thank you, Rabia. Thank you everyone for attending.
Like to have you next time on the whale shark also with us.
Anything on sharks?
I'll be attending. I'll not a speaker next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.